Okay, and we're live. Welcome back to the Mind Meld PR Breaking News Vlog. I'm your host, Jonathon Narvey, and I am here with a special guest today, Yitzi Weiner from The Authority magazine. Now, I'm going to introduce Yitzi and tell you a little bit about The Authority. Of course, Yitzi is going to be able to fill in some of the blanks there, but sort of big picture. So Yitzi is editor-in-chief of Authority magazine. I see you're also CEO of Thought Leader Incubator. I may ask you about that a little bit later. For those who may be unfamiliar with Authority magazine, this is a pretty startling number. You've conducted nearly 20,000 empowering interviews with prominent authorities like, say, Chris Evans, Captain America, Shaquille O'Neal, Peyton Manning, Snoop Dogg, and there's of course countless interviews with CEOs, CTOs, leaders in tech. You've got here Google, Twitter. You've covered a lot. So before we get going with questions, Yitzi, maybe did you want to sort of add a little bit of context? What makes you, what got you into the editor role at The Authority? What's your background?
Sure. Well, again, I just want to thank you, Jonathan, for this kind invitation. I've known you for a bit, and it's a delight to put a face to the email. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about Authority magazine. My background is I was a teaching rabbi for 15 years, and although it's a very fulfilling profession, it wasn't fulfilling for my wallet, so to speak. Now, it was hard to make ends meet, so eventually I decided I had to find another opportunity for my growing family, and in the course of the search, I was a contributing writer for Huffington Post, and the beat that I had at Huffington Post was I would do interviews with leaders, some celebrities, and I made it a great focus to build relationships with publicists, because I knew that publicists were the gatekeepers to people that would be interesting to talk to, and they would provide access. So I made that a focus, and eventually Huffington Post closed down their contributor platform. So I lost that platform, but I still had that relationship equity with those publicists. And then I had all these interviews that had no place to go. And again, both my wife and a friend of mine said, "I want you to start your own platform." So I was familiar already with the medium ecosystem for writing for Thrive Global, but I thought that would be a very good fit. And we started Authority magazine. Authority magazine's focus is to talk to authorities, to have authorities, in their own words, share empowering ideas. So the idea is to focus on the reader, giving the reader empowering ideas, as opposed to focusing on the interviewee. Of course, interviewee is the speaker, so it's the spotlight's on them, but the idea is to give value to the reader. And with my background in teaching, my teaching has always been using questions to elicit ideas, to elicit conversation. So that's really been our approach, is to use questions to elicit stories, to elicit ideas that are maybe different. There aren't the run-of-the-mill questions, and they're very in depth, and people are very candid. And I've been very blessed that Authority magazine is now, in terms of content, the largest of media publications, and I think I've really grown a lot. And we mentioned 20,000 interviews, so it wasn't me alone, of course. I have a very, very dedicated and wonderful team behind me, but together we're able to cover a lot of ground and cover some important people, and I think to share some exciting and empowering ideas.
Fantastic. By the way, so if I haven't made clear before to the audience, I'm a huge fan of the Authority magazine's content. I'm also a big fan of long form conversations in podcasts like the Joe Rogan or Dave Rubin podcast. And to me, the Authority interviews are so long, so in depth that you kind of get that sense of if you're going to explore a topic, you're not going to leave something uncovered. Like these are in-depth pieces where the guests really get to speak their mind and give, you know, the examples that like you give them the space to do that. So fantastic. Also, I want to touch on something that you spoke about when you were first building the authority, and that's your focus on building relationships with publicists and your awareness that this was going to be the key to your success dealing with PR people. I almost feel like, and you know, I'm not complaining or anything, but I feel like often editors and publishers, especially if they're starting out, sort of put that as sort of a secondary consideration. Their main focus is typically on, you know, they're primarily content people. They're people who create stories, and that's where they want to focus their time. So building relationship with publicists is well, extremely useful, and you've taken full advantage. So fantastic. I feel like that's a smart kind of a way in that maybe some publishers of new publications or even traditional publications haven't taken full advantage of. It, you know, we're sort of a necessary evil, but we need the stories. But anyways, did you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, you're making an excellent observation. And the truth is that I think what you said makes sense, and there is a place for that. You know, the truth is that, like, you know, almost like almost like, let's say, with the jury and a judge and you know, an attorney and a prosecutor, there could be an adversarial relationship between a publicist and an editor, because the publicist's job is to put their client in the best light, and the editor's job is to share the truth. So therefore, there's supposed to be pushback. So that standoff relationship would make sense, and that's been the way it is probably since the beginning. But the difference is that my purpose is not to break news. My purpose isn't to do investigative journalism. My purpose isn't to uncover truth, uncover truths that the person may be hiding. My purpose is to try to ask questions that will bring out stories. So you know, I'm not an investigative reporter. I'm maybe, you know, it's more like a lifestyle editor, where my goal is to be able to inspire the interviewee to share ideas that may not have been elicited before. So to answer your question, I think what you said makes sense, and there's a role for that. But that's why I'm different, because I have a different editorial beat.
Excellent, fantastic. And this is the last thing I'm going to ask you about, sort of the backstory connected to the authority before we get into the meat of this, is just, yeah, I feel like that ties in nicely with really your background, you know, as a rabbi. You know, you're like, how would you say that background, you know, sort of professionally and the tradition of it, and, you know, that role has influenced, you know, your journalistic journey?
It's an excellent question, and I haven't really spoken about this too much, but I think 100% of the work that I do today as an editor, 100% of it comes from my experience as a rabbi, both in terms of the writing, both in terms of my technique of asking questions to draw a response, both in terms of my focus on social impacts and things that people are making a difference, and also just more practically, in the course of being a rabbi, I learned how to do graphic design and web design and some promotion and marketing, typography even. So much of those skills I see all the time coming up. Even like using Google Docs, Google Forms, which I really found to be really helpful. I was using those different capacities as a rabbi. So 100%, it's been the greatest training ground, the greatest journalistic school for what I'm doing.
Fantastic. So, you know, getting into the stories that you love to have on the authority, maybe what would you say are, you know, really some standouts that you're quite proud of, that appeared on the authority, and you'd like to see more of this kind of thing?
Sure, excellent question. So, you know, what I love is having people that have a large platform and that are, you know, quote unquote famous, and have them ask them a question that puts them, so to speak, on the record to making a stand to make a difference. So like, you know, so if me or someone not so well known would say that I want to do this, or this is a good idea, so people won't necessarily hear about it. But if Shaquille O'Neal would say it, or Floyd Mayweather would say it, or the CTO of Twitter would say it, then it makes a difference because they have a much larger audience. So that's what I love. So the truth is, I mean, of course, I loved all the celebrity interviews, and I loved, you know, I love all these famous companies. I love that. But what I love the most is having somebody who is a prominent person to share, you know, to share publicly inspiration that can inspire others. Yeah, but for sure, all the names that you mentioned before are the ones that I enjoy. I enjoyed my conversation with Floyd Mayweather and Shaquille O'Neal and you know, many of the, you know, the tech companies that are well known. You know, the CEO of Zoom and the CEO, you know, yeah, not CEO, but you know, the chief executives of Google and Twitter and Facebook and Microsoft and other Fortune 500 companies. Yeah, I enjoyed that very much. I also enjoyed. I had a conversation with Kathy Sullivan recently. She's like the first woman. I think she's the first woman to do a spacewalk, and she spoke about, you know, the future of space industry and the you know, the important, why there's an imperative to develop the technology to bring people to Mars. I thought that was really interesting. I did an interview with Jane Goodall, also very interesting. So yeah, so I think that's the kind of the thread is people that are well known who share inspiring ideas that could reach a broad audience.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, what about, you know, we know that not every interviewee or potential interviewee for the authority is already going to have a brand name. I mean, this is why they would hire a PR firm in the first place. They want to get their name out there, and hopefully their story is compelling enough that it's worth your time. So yeah, what would be maybe some common characteristics of stories from, say, you know, whether it's founders or other people who, you know, have done something, they're not famous yet. What are some common characteristics that sort of you think help them get into a publication like The Authority?
Sure. So the truth is, I'm happy you asked the question because I don't. That isn't our. I think in contrast to other publications, you don't need to be famous to be published in Authority. As you know, our beat is interviews, and we have many interview topics. We design interview topics to be as broad as possible and to be inclusive as possible. So almost every type of person can find something that they could be interviewed about. That was really the idea. We have all these different topics to create the most surface area, so to speak, to reach as many people as possible. So you don't have to be famous. As you mentioned, we love long form interviews that give context, that give good texture, that are you know, that are humble, that share vulnerability, that share, you know, amusing or self-effacing stories. You know, things that are not too self-promotional. Of course, I understand that people's goals is to promote themselves, but if you turn the reader off, if it's all you know, bragging, you know, often just being authentic and being vulnerable can be much bigger promotion. So to answer your question, you don't have to be famous. As long as you want to do a good interview, share inspiring ideas, and as long as the topic fits, it fits. And we try our best to be as inclusive as possible, to bring as a wide array of voices as possible. We try our best to particularly to create topics that would include people that wouldn't necessarily be included. So, for example, we have a series called Media Disruptors, where we created another series called Female Disruptors, even though it's kind of the same thing, because we found that media disruptors, 80% of that were men, and it's not representative of you know, of the population. So by making a topic that specifically reached out to those who are, you know, who are somewhat not as engaged, we're able to try to balance it out a bit.
Fantastic. Well, yeah. So you're always looking for new kinds of, you know, interesting topics and angles. And I want to touch on something you mentioned maybe a minute ago, is just the idea of showing vulnerability is a powerful thing in an interview. And so I talk about this all the time with my clients, where, you know, if they can show, you know, really a story of redemption, of you know, I strayed from the path. I mean, I was trying, I made mistakes. Here are the mistakes that I made, and I'm open about that. This is what I learned. You know, we were 10 days away from closing the company entirely. And then we hit on the thing that we thought, you know what, this is the thing that is going to maybe save us. And it does. And that's an exciting story. So things like that. And, you know, I talk to a lot of fellow marketers and publicists, and I know that they tend to try to stay away from that. They don't want to put out anything that makes their client look weak, look bad, look dumb. And to me, you know, as a former journalist, I just look at that and I'm like, no, there's so much power in this. Maybe we've covered that, but I don't know if you had any further thought on that.
No, I agree 100%. 100%. I think that it's the virtue of humility, which was, I think vulnerability is a way to display humility. I think that humility is, that virtue hasn't been spoken about enough. You know, we live in a society where people want to be famous and people want to be powerful, and that kind of goes to our lizard brains to be, you know, the alpha male, the leader of the pack. But when you do that, you create, you know, people are become resistant to you, and people are afraid of you. If you want to create openness and want people to create connection, being humble could actually be much more effective. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not saying that, you know, you can't, you know, I'm not saying that humility should be like the major operating principle of marketing, but definitely, I think if you want to be appealing and attractive, humility can be very effective. So yeah, and I think also it's a cultural thing. I think, you know, like Brené Brown has famously made this her, you know, her mantra, the importance of vulnerability. And I think that that's taken a hold in America. And I found that people from other countries, like in Europe or in Asia, you know, they're much less open to that. Again, I can't generalize, but I found that I think it's really a cultural thing of perceiving the importance of vulnerability and humility. But I agree with you 100%.
Fantastic. So maybe let's, you know, we covered the stuff that you love to get, and maybe what are some kinds of stories that, you know, people have tried to submit, and or you know, some interviews people have maybe wanted to throw your way, and you're just like, you know, this doesn't make the cut. Like, what, maybe some advice to help people sort of get you the stories that you actually want?
Sure, excellent question. So I think I think publicists that are not so as seasoned as you are, or haven't really been around. So I think they're like the visceral, like the intuitive approach would be, you want to get their attention by showing something, you know, that's you know, that makes a person stand out. So they'll say, this person by 20 made $10 million, you know, in 6 months. So that maybe there's a place for that. But when I see that, it doesn't interest me at all. I'm not interested by the person making a lot of money when they're 20. I think also, like, I think just that concept in general, being able to say, you make a lot of money at 20, I have a stinging suspicion that the Forbes 30 under 30 lists, I feel like that's gonna be like their highest point. You know, I think you're kind of like you're kind of stunting their growth. I think that the fact that a person had a lot of success by 30 doesn't really mean that much. You know, you want to judge the story by the end, not by the very beginning of the story. So, so yeah, those type of topics. You know, this person did great, made a lot of money by 20. Doesn't interest me. That headline, that subject line. But yeah, you know, we have like 5 main verticals. So, and the truth is, they all kind of reflect my own interests. But one of our main verticals is social impact. So people that are doing anything to do a social impact, even if it's a business, but that's having a social impact. We love those type of things. People that are doing, so we have that's a whole vertical of social impact. We have a whole vertical on technology. So cutting edge technology, you know, new innovations that haven't been done before, you know, things that are showing what the future will look like, we're very interested in. But, you know, it shouldn't be like unscientific, you know. So like we talk about like different medicines that haven't been FDA approved. So I get that a lot. I want us to be seen as authoritative.
It's in
Hence
the
our
name.
name, and 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 so if things are, it shouldn't be things that will kind of that will take away the authority of of our message. But things that are cutting edge, innovative, really interesting. Just leaders, people that are either CEOs or not, even if they're not CEOs, of the founders for a small startup. But if you're doing interesting things and if you have interesting advice, so for me, that's really the main thing, is to share good advice, good stories, good insights to the reader. And for me, my main audience is the reader. Like, my main focus. Other businesses, other media outlets, their main consumer are the advertisers. We don't make money from advertising. So my main focus is the reader, and the more the readers enjoy it, the more will be successful.
That's fantastic. Well, I am so happy for your success, Yitzi, and I look forward to pitching you many years into the future. So yeah, if somebody wanted to learn more about the Authority magazine and the stuff that you do, where would they find you?
Yeah, they could just Google Authority magazine. It should come up. Authority magazine, you'll see all the different verticals. If you want to learn it, so it's not so open. It's a bit out of the way for a reason. But if you wanted to apply to do an interview, if you go to the About page, you'll find a link to submit to do an interview. I'm pretty open. If you need to reach out to me, my email is editor@authoritymag.co. Editor@authoritymag.co.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yitzi. You've been very generous with your time, and I really appreciate your insights here. This has been a fantastic Mind Meld PR breaking news vlog. I'm your host, Jonathon Narvey. You've been listening to Yitzi Weiner, the editor-in-chief of The Authority. And if you like what you've heard and seen, please subscribe. Please maybe throw us some money if you're looking for PR help. We're around. Thank you very much for your time.